I'd like to call to order the council work session agenda on Monday, July 8th. It is now 4:30. We'll have a regular meeting after the work session. So we are missing one around the table, so I don't need to excuse her, right? Just say she's absent. Thank you. We only have one item on the agenda tonight, but it's an important one. And I would like to remind you, please to refrain asking questions till after staff's presentations are complete. The City Council will receive an overview of the draft City Strategic Action Plan for FY 17-19 and a summary of the previous plan's accomplishments. Pam Weir, Assistant to the City Manager, will present. Pam, you got the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you the proposed draft fiscal year 17 through 19 Strategic Action Plan. This is the annual update of the rolling 3-year document that you've had since 2014. I do want to share briefly, I've been in the organization now just 3 months and really immersed myself in the Strategic Action Plan as my first initiative. Prior to Goodyear, I've worked for about 4 different organizations, doing a lot of strategic planning work in those. And every city and organization does it differently, but I really do want to commend Goodyear and the vision of the City Council. This is by far one of the most thorough and ambitious strategic action plans I have seen thus far, and I think it speaks loudly to the vision of Council as well as to the amazing staff that we have here in the City of Goodyear, and I look forward to working with you on this moving forward. So today we'll go over a brief background of the Strategic Action Plan, what brought you here to today, the history of the development, including the vision, focus areas, and action items. We'll talk a little bit about how the plan fits into the overall performance management program here in Goodyear, how it aligns with the general plan, other departmental operations plans, and how we tie it into the budget process and other activities that the city does. We'll then briefly highlight some of the progress that we made on the plan over the last about 18 months. There have been many, many accomplishments, all of which are detailed in the full draft document that you have been provided. We'll go over some of the high-level accomplishments tonight, and then we'll shift the bulk of our conversation around the proposed plan changes moving into fiscal years 27 through 19. There are a number of items we're recommending come off the plan, as well as items that we add on based on conversations at your council retreat last winter, as well as recommendations from staff, along with things that were added through the budget supplemental process. So then finally, we'd like to have some discussion and reach some consensus around the changes to the plan and talk about the next steps moving forward. So quickly, as for some background on the plan, it's been in existence since 2013 is when you first adopted the plan. And your approach to strategic planning is very collaborative along with city staff. You have multiple levels of planning that you go through, and it's impressive to see the way that you have sort of maintained that long-term trajectory with your vision tied to your general plan, but then year to year really focusing in on what are the steps that you can take to slowly accomplish that vision. You did a formal adoption in 2014 of an updated plan, and then in 2015, last November, you'll remember there was a status update of many of the accomplishments that will be shared here this evening, but this is the first formal update to the plan since 2014. So at the top of the plan, if you will, the vision of City Council sets the direction for all of the work that the city is doing. As you'll see, your vision is to have the city of Goodyear become a great place to live, work, and raise a family, a city with healthy lifestyles, commitment to the environment, a growing community providing quality opportunities, and you'd like to be known as a destination for several things, including shopping, higher education, diverse job opportunities, entrepreneurship, and arts and culture. Below that vision, you've identified 4 focus areas that were established by council consensus back in 2011. Those include fiscal and resource management, economic vitality, sense of community, and quality of life. And these 4 focus areas really encompass the areas in which the city works to make a better community for Goodyear. Those 4 focus areas also tie to the results maps in our priority-based budgeting program as well. And so you'll see alignment between those focus areas and a lot of what the city does. In a large sense, Goodyear has a very robust approach to performance management. It's not just one plan. I've admired the way that all of these pieces and parts fit together over the course of the year. Certainly at the top of our performance management, our feedback from citizens and then leadership from the city council, and that really sets the general plan, which is the long-term vision for the community. So within that, we have the reason we're here today, the strategic action plan and those 4 focus areas. And as I mentioned, those are the incremental steps we take to achieve those bigger visions. That strategic action plan then feeds into the work that all of our departments do. The strategic action plan encompasses work being done by every department, but it's not all encompassing. There's also additional operational day-to-day work that our departments do. Those feed into the various programs and then down to individual employee performance and performance measures. And then as information cascades down that chart, it also then there's a regular feedback loop that I'll cover in a moment. Within the strategic action plan, you have an established 4-level structure. You have the focus areas, those 4 areas that I've identified already. Then you have a level that we call goals. Goals are higher level policy direction. It's not one specific program or activity, but it's a general, more kind of 3-year focus of a direction that council would like to set. And those first 2 levels really are council driven. Those come from you all, come from the work that you do in your yearly retreats and things like that. The 3rd level down, the actions, that's really where the collaboration between council and staff occurs the most strongly. Many actions are specific programs and policies recommended by the city council, but we also have action items that are brought up from the city departments in their areas of expertise, emerging issues that they bring to council that council would like to act upon. And then also, of course, the legally mandated work that we do can find itself on the strategic action plan. And then finally, the planned activity level, that's really the level that lives within our departments and our city staff. Those are those month by month tasks that they're performing that we just like to update you on so you can understand the progress towards those larger goals. The performance management cycle, we have these 6 components that all create a never-ending feedback loop for the work of the city. The strategic action plan is one living component of this cycle. We receive citizen input in a variety of ways every year throughout the year. A couple of the main ways are through the citizen satisfaction survey, as well as various events and city council meetings and commission meetings where we gain input from citizens. That a lot of that can feed into the discussions that you have in your city council retreat. Our next one is coming up in October, which then ultimately feeds into the development of the annual budget. That budget process is linked closely with our strategic action plan process because, of course, ensuring that there's alignment between what you're funding and what you're saying you want to do is crucial. That then, as I mentioned, feeds into the departmental work as well as performance measurement, fiscal monitoring, and so on. In the fiscal 16 to 17 budget process, there was a review over the strategic priorities and what was in the strategic action plan as you considered which budget supplementals to carry forward and to fund. So the strategic action plan for fiscal years 15 through 17, so this is your last adopted plan. Just wanted to provide you an at-a-glance update as the progress of those items. As you remember, while it's an annual update process, most of the items have about a 3-year window. So in any given year, you won't see an entire list of actions complete and turn over. You'll have some that carry through. So this last plan, we're happy to say that more than half are complete or what we call complete and ongoing. So these are action items that staff has said, we accomplished the spirit of the action. However, it's not a finite action. So it would be something like conducting the citizen survey and incorporating those results into the way we do city business and customer service. Yes, we accomplish a single survey and we integrate those results, but then we're going to continue doing that year after year. So as a council, those are items that you want to keep sort of out in the spotlight so they remain on the plan even though the work is ongoing. In progress, pretty self-explanatory. They have been initiated but not completed. And then on hold, we currently have one item that we deem on hold. That item is deals with coordinating with ADOT regarding a Tucson to Phoenix passenger rail corridor study. That's a long-term schedule that the city doesn't have a lot of control over, so we're keeping it on the radar, but we don't know exactly when that might move forward. Sure. Do you have any questions or comments thus far on the...
Would you like to do that? Because
Sure,
I gave them directions,
absolutely.
so they're all being like this. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great on the overall structure.
Comments after this first section?
I'll wait till she gets further.
All right. Anybody else?
I'm out of cycle, so.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Nobody else? I'm reading face looks over there to the right. It doesn't look like I'm getting...
No, I'll just wait till the end, too.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So this next phase of the agenda, I'd like to go over some accomplishments that the city is very proud of. Some of these you have seen before through the budget process. And then I'm also going to highlight for you those 16 items that have been deemed complete by staff and propose to you that they be not carried over to the 17 through 19 plan. So the executive summary of your strategic action plan booklet contains hundreds of updates and highlights and things like that. We just pulled a handful from each focus area to give you a general idea of the kinds of results that this sort of plan can accomplish. So I won't go into a lot of detail here, but we're happy to answer questions as you've been reviewing the document if there's something that you're particularly interested in. You'll see in the area of fiscal resource management, one of the eye-opening accomplishments was we've completed 2 of 4 bond refinancings thus far for a collective savings of almost $3 million. There are 2 more that still need to be refinanced in the coming year, and it's a high priority, the GO bonds, the general obligation bonds, as well as the PIC bonds. And that has an anticipated additional savings of over $15 million. So we look forward to that. In addition, our volunteer program that has remained a priority in the last year contributed 30,000 hours for a total of $690,000 in value add to the organization. In the realm of economic vitality, improvements were made to the economic development website, as well as lots of the development and engineering processes. This is really where a lot of our work around Lean, Six Sigma has come into play in the organization, incorporating the voice of the customer into the work that we do and improving the experience for businesses in our community. In sense of community, our last citizen survey, which we conducted and is described in the strategic action plan, 93% of residents rated Goodyear as an excellent or good place to live. And also council worked to develop some business-friendly values. How can we work better with our business community to encourage development in Goodyear? In quality of life, on the public safety side, we've moved to electronic patient care reporting, which really improves the efficiency of how we deal with our citizens in relation to EMS services. You also recently approved the IGA that will allow the city very soon to complete the purchase of a future community wellness park in the I-10 basins. So those are some highlights. I'd be happy to go into more detail about anything if you have questions. Otherwise, I'll move on to those completed items that I mentioned before.
Joe Pizzillo?
You may cover it later, but my question is for each one of these, do you have clear benchmarks of achievable when you line these up? For example, the one that talks about the 13% increase in cities' health insurance rates. What would be that benchmark? Stay below the average of what increases have been for a period instead of just stating what we did. Another example is 1 million square feet of commercial building is under construction. With that benchmark, what were we shooting for? 500,000, 300,000? I guess my question is, it's good to list them, but from my perspective, were there benchmarks identified to know whether we hit or missed that goal? Does that make sense?
Sure,
And
yeah.
if you're covering it later down the road, that's fine.
I absolutely understand the question. I can tell you that, and forgive me, I'm a little new to some of these processes still, but I can tell you for a lot of the numbers, they are simply raw outcomes at this point. We do have our extensive city stat program where we're measuring all kinds of different metrics. We are part of the Valley Benchmark cities, as you well know. I can speak to the city health insurance rate. That number came from historic performance of our health insurance rates, was my understanding, and that at times it has been up to a 13% increase. And so the fact that there was a 0% this year was very significant to the organization.
Yeah, I appreciate the numbers, but to me, when you're going in to know whether you've accomplished or not accomplished, you usually have benchmarks or some type of goal or criteria that you're shooting for. And I'm just wondering if we have these details or accomplishments, did we meet? Was it 0 and then 13? Obviously, that's what I'm kind of getting at, instead of just stats that are saying, here's what we did, but what were we shooting for as part of the overall? That's where I'm kind of coming from in the big picture.
Sure, absolutely. And ongoing, as we work on our priority-based budgeting and other processes, I think that we'll continue to embed those benchmarks and things like that more and more. So you'll see a growing comparisons in a lot of the different realms, and then sometimes they will be kind of more raw output.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
To kind of follow up on that, and it's difficult to ask questions because you are new. But over the last 6 or 8 months, we have had some discussion about even our performance measurement system, and the acknowledgement was made earlier that many of our numbers are, the term you use, are just simply raw data, and it doesn't really help us measure performance. And I think for me going forward, when we talk about highlights and this concept of performance management, we have a very robust city stat program, but we're just measuring stuff. We're not identifying performance. And we've talked about that, and what we've been told in the past, and I guess this is more directed at the manager, are we going to be updating that? Because I haven't seen anything that talks about reviewing the performance management criteria and the statistic or the what we're reporting, et cetera. And I think if we're going to try to lump these things together and we want to rally behind it, then they've got to be meaningful. And up until this point, since we've been now doing this for 5 years, we're driving out of meaningful, and we're driving into some netherland of just doing a lot of work. So I think, to kind of echo what Councilmember Pizzillo was talking about, is if we're going to highlight stuff and we're going to wave the banner of these are our highlights, then they really need to be meaningful. And quite honestly, even the way we frame it, we didn't avoid a 13%. We achieved a 0% increase. I mean, that's the news. Not that we avoided 13%, but we achieved 0, and that's something to celebrate. So how we've got it even worded here, I think, tells a different story than what actually happened. So I think we need to start looking at that. If we're gonna go down the road and we're gonna invest all this time in what we talk about as a strategic action plan and performance measurement, we got to get it right, or we shouldn't even be bothered to do it.
Sherry?
I think you have a lot of really good information, but I think one thing we've always stumbled on, is kind of building on both Joe and Bill's point, is that I'd like to see like specifics, like even further on, that kind of what your comment made kind of brought me to the lean, the project lean. I know there's some really good stuff going with lean and with the performance-based budgeting, but I think we really need to explain that and give people more numbers and facts to say, we saved you this much money with these steps that we did through Project Lean. Otherwise, I think it does look a little just bureaucratic, and it just kind of goes off into this netherworld of the city did another report, rather than no, it wasn't a report, it was a process, and this process saved you, the taxpayer, X amount. So I think we need to add that other layer in there, and I think that would help me and also help, I think, our citizens see where that it's not just another report, that there is actually something that they're getting from this, and it's actually saving them money, because there's a lot of good stuff here, and I just think we need a little more, that other layer.
Wally?
I just wanted some clarification on the improved communication to the Mobile community. What do you mean by that? We've been talking to them, so what's new there?
Sure, absolutely. One of the strategic action plan items that was created in the last plan was to expand outreach to that area and so on. And so several of the departments engaged in some specific activities. There are some details in the book itself, but I can tell you Public Works, along with our police and fire, did some outreach to the school down there, a Touch a Truck program where they brought down vehicles and introduced, bike safety and things like that to the kids.
Which we've been doing all along. So
And
this is different?
So keep in mind, some of these accomplishments span the last up to 3 years because of the planning cycle. And so some of these things you will have seen be completed earlier in the plan
okay,
cycle.
I got it. And is this the draft we have?
Yes.
I just don't have mine, so that's okay, because I haven't been in the office all week. I'm a little behind, so that's fine. I understand it now. I forgot it was ongoing 3 years, but every year we add something new that we do down there at the school. So that's great.
Any other questions? Yes.
Mayor and
Brian?
council members, and some of the background, appreciate the comments. I mean, this is something that when you talk about performance measures, it's an ongoing process. So we started this, council initially brought it up to staff in the summer of 2012. We came back to council in 2013 with our first really dive into it. And part of that dive was to look at different ways of measuring. So we participated with International City Managers Association, trying to come up with benchmarks for performance. And that was about a year-long process where we came up with, we're not really comparing apples to apples as we go through that. So we're still engaged. ICMA has decided that they really need to increase the benefits of participating in their performance management. The other thing that we did is Valley benchmarking. That was one where Goodyear, we raised our hand up to be part of a larger city effort and looking at benchmarks across the Metro Phoenix area. We have done that. There are certain benchmarks that we can look at and compare ourselves. So that's part of it as well. And then the last part is our performance measures. It's a work in progress. Be very upfront with council. It's one of those, we're looking everything from workload indicators that are very important for the departments. So as we look at demands for service, are we meeting those? Do we additional staff or resources needed to accomplish those? So it's really kind of workload indicators. But the other part of it is what are the most relevant measures to council, especially as it considers this plan. We're looking at some kind of higher level ones, if you will, where we look at where are we performing. And this is not one and done by any stretch. As I stated, we've been working at this since 2013. We've given updates to council and appreciate your patience on this, but this is very, I would say, complex in trying to now integrate it with some of the other initiatives that we're doing. So if you look at strategic action plan, priority-based budgeting. As we talked to council in November, we were able to lay out how they all kind of fit together. But at the same time, the work is now making the connections between each of those initiatives. So just wanted to give council that background as well.
Any other? Go ahead.
So in the realm of accomplishments, as I mentioned, there are 16 action items. So you remember the third level down in the strategic action plan that based on the way that the action is defined and the staff work that has been done, we recommend those be considered truly complete and not carry over onto the next plan. So the first 5 that you see on this slide all come from the area of fiscal and resource management. There are 5 actions. And I'm happy to go into detail if you have questions about individual ones. but I'll kind of go through one full slide at a time and then pause for you. So the first, establishing citywide guidelines for processing of special events. That ordinance was adopted in June of 2014 by council. There were then some updates that had needed to be made, so it had been on hold for a short period of time. The amended ordinance was adopted May 11th of 2015, and that has helped to streamline and provide guidelines as well for processing special events. Second, in July of 2014, the city's new fleet maintenance facility was completed, and it's been a great asset to the city's operations. Third, the facility's master plan was adopted by council on April 11th, 2016. The next one, implementing improved performance appraisal process. This is another one that completed actually a couple of years ago within the strategic action cycle. There was a new standardized tool developed at the very end of the calendar year 2013 that has been implemented, as well as some additional performance appraisal programming like shout-out awards for exceptional performers within the city. And then finally, council had requested evaluating the feasibility of an electronic voting system at council meetings. That one had been evaluated and was implemented for a very brief time at the end of 2014, and my understanding is that after 3 council meetings, it was decided that it didn't meet the needs of council any longer.
Yes.
So,
Yes, we did, Bill.
I'm like, did I miss a whole series of
I
meetings?
guess you
But
do. Yeah,
You always voted early.
it was not,
I remember doing it. I just don't remember the outcome.
oh, that was the outcome.
Yeah, they just disappeared. So
No, and we stated from the council, they would like it to disappear. So you maybe weren't in the conversation. Most did, yeah.
yeah, wow, I didn't. Is there a report out on that? I mean, did we generate a final?
I don't know, Mayor and Councilmember Stipp, not a final report, it was a direction at council. I believe it was by consensus in reaching out to council that this is something that council did not want to keep.
One we did not feel like it worked well. Maybe you could work well. You're not up here running everything, okay? So if I could switch places with you, you might have a different view, although you're used to the city. You're used to the system, okay? You guys been working computers and all kinds of things all your life. But you have people on this council that are not, and it did not work. It was an absolute chaos, and I cannot believe you did not remember it. It was so chaotic that it.
I remember it.
Yeah, you can't forget that evening.
You don't remember?
So
Evenings,
if there was another process presented that worked better than that one, that did not. At least in the mayor's position, it did not work. And that's the feedback I got as a mayor from you that night. Yeah.
And you know what? That is your choice because you do run these meetings, and I understand that.
So,
I just don't know that we actually, as you said, it was by consensus. It wasn't, I didn't have a problem with it.
yes, you
but
did.
it's-
Everybody had a
Well,
problem that night, so
because it
I'm
was
not going to
chaos,
let you off
because
the
not
hook.
everybody
I'm
got
not letting you
it.
guys off the hook. You all, and
You know
if
what?
you
It's
had
okay,
not,
Georgia.
you would have come to
It's
me.
it
All
was
right.
your process, and that's okay.
And everybody's
That is
memory
yours.
seems to be a little
That's
blended on
okay.
that. So right now, if we want another process, there'll be a time, then you can suggest that, and we can spend more money on that
No,
bill,
no, no,
and
no,
we
no,
can
no,
bring it in and try a new process, but that one did not work well. Amen.
That's okay.
All right, go ahead.
Can I have a question?
Yes, Phil.
The improved performance appraisal process, I understand we completed that. Is there a follow-up action to evaluate it? Because just because we changed it doesn't mean it's working. So is there a follow-up to be done with that? Is there?
Mayor and Councilmember Stipp, and if HR is behind me, they can certainly add to this as well. This was just by way of background, the performance appraisal system was broken. That was one of the criticisms we heard from our employees. So what we did is we established a team of employees that really helped us to look at the process, see where we could improve. So what came out of that is in 50% of the and by the way, we looked at what some of the different departments had done. I know, for example, fire had created one and because the other one just did not work. So getting the input of all the departments, what we developed was one that had 50% of your rating, if you will, is subject to, I'll call it the professional and soft skills and customer service and those types of things. So all employees have to abide by that. And then the other 50% we developed through looking at each employee's job description as far as what their technical requirements were, what their jobs were. It was a very involved process. So 50% of their ratings, if you will, were tied to their specific job. So from that standpoint, we have heard great feedback from the employees. We are doing another employee survey. We do that every 2 years, and that will be this August. So we will be surveying employees again. There's always room for comments in there, but the survey instrument is what we used before. But if Human Resources or Dan or Wynette have any additional information on that, if you could come up here.
See what happened after this discussion.
I know. Sorry, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add, except with the employee survey, there are questions in there about evaluation of employees, and so that's an opportunity for them to provide feedback as to the new system. I know with the last one, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, I was very surprised and pleased at how positive that particular area was rated. So we'll see. Again, it's 2 years into it. I think we had maybe a year under our belts at that time, and have since made it electronic and pretty seamless. So every 2 years we can evaluate that process.
And if I may, one other thing that we do, so all employee performance appraisals are done in December, so they're all done so they don't go with your anniversary date. The other thing that we did in this July, every July, each employee will have a mid-year review, and the importance of that is, as we talk about in GEO, good year employee orientation is setting the employees up for success. So as part of that, making sure that they know what their objectives are. So halfway through the year, we do a reality check. If there are areas that aren't working, do we need to tweak that performance objective, or what resources can we help them out with? So they're well aware by the time we roll into December of where they stand. The other thing that we do, it's a meet or doesn't meet. So that was part of the performance appraisal that we did as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilmember Sipp, your question also makes me want to add, while we recommend these 16 items be pulled from the plan because they have been identified as complete, we are by no means saying they're ending up on shelves and we're kind of forgetting about them for the next 5 years. Part of the effort with the strategic action plan is to sort of keep the document fresh and ensure that those high-level priorities are really what's staying on the plan and that it doesn't just continually expand year after year after year. But absolutely within the departmental operations plans and things like that, a lot of the implementation of the facilities master plan, for example, it may not be present in the strategic plan, but it is very much a part of what our departments are working on. So in the area of economic vitality, we've identified 7 actions that are complete. And again, a lot of them you'll see are the completion of documents. Those documents will be both implemented and refreshed as needed. But I do want to share with you the 2025 general plan update was approved by council in June of 2014 and ratified in the November 2014 election by the citizens of Goodyear. The City Council Transportation Master Plan that was approved in July of 2014, as well as the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan in July of 2014. The development fees were updated by Council May 12th of 2014, and that included a public hearing process as well as an adoption of the land use and infrastructure improvement plans. The Goodyear Visitors Guide, along with the Restaurant and Hotel Guide, those ended up being one document with 2 components. Those were updated and distributed widely starting in 2014 and continued to be updated. And then finally, the Pavement Management Program Strategy. That's another one. The strategy was presented to City Council in August of 2014, but was then incorporated into the 10-year capital plan. So that work is ongoing.
Questions? Joe?
On the pavement management strategy, it's my understanding a lot of it also depends on money availability, and we had ratings at 70%, as I recall. And I realize we have adopted a plan on how it would work in the capital, but I hate to see that one on the shelf only because if for some reason legislation change, they dry up some of our funding sources, or we get additional funding sources where we want to change that criteria of when certain roads are replaced, that we just don't forget it. So yeah, I realize we've got that there, but that's something that's real important to our citizens, quality of our roads. So if more funds come in or more issues where we can do more or lower that threshold, I hate to see it we're locked into something when we can improve maybe the quality of the roads to the system. So that's only my comments on that last one.
Joanne?
Thank you. So actually on the heels of what Councilmember Brazil stated, as I said, I did this out of cycle because I went page by page, word by word, and I've completely updated it for myself. And something that I see in concert with the pavement management program is a sidewalk master plan. And I know that that has come up here and there. Don't know if there has been consensus on that is going to take place, but it really does go with the pavement and the roads. And so it's been something that has been talked about. That is an item that, you know, I'd like to know more about and that I'd like to, as a strategy, see that we look at also. So, you know, I guess I'm up for a little clarification on, does that belong with pavement management or is it a separate entity? Is it something that we don't have to have in our strategic plan, but it's something that I think is important. So you guys, you know, I'll wait for the answer later, but that's what I question on.
Wally?
I am okay about taking the development fee study off for a while, but I don't know we want to wait 5 years to look at it. I don't know how often we look at it. I know we can't change our fees every year, but as the economy gets better, if it ever does, and building increases and costs go up, we may need to look at that. So I don't know, Mr. City Manager, how you handle things that are put on the shelf and how you ask someone to take a look. And it's the same thing with the restaurant and hotel guide and the visitor's guide. I'm hoping that someday we're going to have something really spectacular open up, you know, like if we develop around that ballpark. Then if we do, I think we need to redo the visitor's guide or add that part into it. And I just don't want it done and us not look at it for 5 or 6 years or something.
Ryan?
Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, probably the best way of stating that, and Pam hit it somewhat, is when we get a document that's done, doesn't mean that it just sits on the shelf, goes away. Specific to the development fee study, that's one that we have to update. We have to make sure that we're meeting the infrastructure improvement plan as part of that we're collecting the fees and spending them where we have said we're going to spend them. So we're actually in process again, looking at those. Doug, if you have any updates on that, feel free to come up. But I do know that that's something that we're looking at again. And then as it relates to updates on any of the, you know, restaurant hotel guide, those will get updates as once there's enough new stuff, if you will, to put into the brochures.
I think the positive thing about that is economic development, and it spurs more economic development on. So I'm assuming that's part of the direction in charge of the different departments. So that's, right. I would think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Sherilyn?
And I had them send the guide to me electronically, and I didn't notice that there was any place or any notation or footnote or that perhaps you could, because as soon as you print it, it's outdated. We know that. There's going to be statistics. There's going to be, to refer them to the website, tourism website or what we're developing, so that they know they have a source. If real current information is important to them, they can be referred to that source. It may be there, but I didn't see it.
Well, we'll definitely have it checked out from your comment. Anybody else? All right, go ahead.
So finally, in the areas of sense of community and quality of life, there are 2 actions in each of those areas we're recommending. The first was incorporating the maintenance of the Mobile, Sonoran and Valley area roads into the street maintenance program. That has been done, and there's an agreement with Maricopa County that every 8 weeks the city maintained portions are monitored and that repairs are completed as needed. The evaluation of the art and private development program, so what was complete was the evaluation. It was examined, and this is the idea of having art incorporated in private entity developments within the community. Ultimately, after evaluating and discussion, it was determined the program wasn't particularly viable at this point, given the current economy, that to be competitive to attract businesses, adding additional requirements of the businesses did not make a lot of sense right now. So that's why that item has been identified as complete. And then within quality of life, the police department had been working toward the CALIA police accreditation. They implemented many of the processes, but they hit some speed bumps in terms of the formal accreditation process, in terms of some timelines, interacting with other large ongoing projects. And so the chief had made the decision for now to deem the evaluation of accreditation complete, that the department is doing a lot of the same things, but that the accreditation process itself is pretty laborious. And then finally, implementing an additional cost-effective right-of-way maintenance crew. That was included in your fiscal year 14 to 15 budget, a cost avoidance of about $87,000, adding a third variable maintenance crew for the right-of-ways in the city.
Joanne? No. Joe?
I realize we're up to speed on some of these items that are here, but a lot of them to me are operational, yearly things that should be reviewed regularly. For example, implementing additional cost of right-of-way crews. I would think when Parks is putting its budget together, they will continually look to see if there's more cost-effective ways that we can deliver that service. The arts and private development program, that's something that should be ongoing, part of operational. I don't see that in a strategic plan. Maintenance at Mobile and Sonoran Valley roads, who knows where that's going to go as that grows. So, and again, I appreciate that we've done that, but I want to make sure that as we go through the budget process, the corresponding department heads continually are looking at this for cost-effective and improvements within their own departments.
Thank you.
More of a comment. Anybody else? All right, go ahead.
So, Mayor, that completes the section of the 16 completed actions. And as we move on to the additions, just to be mindful of time and so on, I didn't hear an explicit consensus that these 16 be removed. I heard 1 or 2 comments about pavement management, as well as the development fees, and the kind of the reoccurring that we not put these on shelves and forget about them, which we assure you is not the plan at all. And so I would like, for myself, getting the plan ready, do you agree that these items can be removed from the plan moving forward, with the understanding that these are a part of regular departmental operations?
Well,
Joanne?
I guess my only question is still going to be out there about the pavement management item. So everything else, I think we're okay on, but that one.
Cheryl-Lynn?
And I applaud the statement that you made. We tend to do that. We tend to hang on to what we put in there and then just keep adding and adding and adding. And not everything can have an emphasis. So I applaud you for looking at things that can be removed, not necessarily out of mind, but just not as part of the strategic plan. I think that's ever so important.
It becomes a great big volume, doesn't it? Wally?
May I address the city manager? Wouldn't the sidewalk portion be something that we could address in our development standards? Because like the area I live in, we don't want sidewalks, and there's no sidewalks built. But we're a master plan community, and the one sidewalk that was put in, our developer put it in. It wasn't the city doing that. Are we looking, excuse me,
No, I'm sorry, I did that. It's
Yeah.
my fault. Go
All
ahead,
right,
keep
so
going.
what I'd like a little clarification is, are we looking at citywide sidewalks? Is this what we're getting at? And if so, that needs to be discussed in the budget because that's an additional expense.
Mayor and Councilmember Campbell, probably the best way to answer that, there's some residential developments that do not have sidewalks,
Right.
Vanderbilt Farms, Pebble Creek, and others.
Right.
Part of the sidewalks is we're looking at areas where there may be voids now, like on Van Buren. So east of Estrella Parkway, we're looking at sidewalks east of the new hospital, emergency hospital that went in as part of the Van Buren project. Sure. But we do have standards. We have standards for when we do arterial road developments as far as how wide the sidewalks are. So we have our standards in place for that. So I do want to recognize that those will happen when road construction happens, but we also have to look at areas where perhaps we don't have sidewalks on arterials. It's probably the best way of answering that.
Is there any way we can get the developers or the folks that own that land to work with the city to maybe share the cost of that? Would that be something that is doable?
Yeah, Councilmember Campbell, for example, Hudson Commons comes to mind. So that one is at the southwest corner of Estrella Parkway and Van Buren. So as part of that, when they go forward with their development, they're required for half-street road improvements. That includes curb gutter, sidewalks. So that is part of their development that would go in. What can happen over time is you get areas that develop and those that don't. And we want to look at continuity for access for our public on sidewalks. So it's some of those scalloped areas can come into play as well. But the development community is required for those. If the developer's gone, then it would come back to the city for those considerations.
And I would hope we would be looking for federal funds because to me that would be a community or a development, relocation of some of the sidewalks or to continue it. So I would hope that, I know we're not eligible for the Tiger grants, but maybe we could figure out some way to fund some of that.
that addressed because I think that's lofty and
It is.
idea. So I'd like that one.
Yeah.
Can you just quickly talk about a Tiger grant and somebody just tell me quickly to this council, well, what is considered in a Tiger grant? Because I don't want us to throw out some ideas here that it just doesn't happen in certain construction of developments. Just give me it doesn't have to be.
So Tiger grants, I know that they're very difficult for us to actually get those grants. And if there's anyone, staff here that can talk in a little bit more detail, can certainly come up here. If not, we can get council that information.
I mean, we know the last Tiger grant went to Maricopa.
Yeah. A
Okay.
big Tiger grant went
Big
to
Tiger
Maricopa.
grant. But, I just did the idea that maybe a sidewalk or two or things like that. I don't think, Sherry, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I just don't, in my view of what I've heard in the last number of years, I don't think those things would be considered for that. So, Sherry, I think, were you first before Sherry?
No, I was just going to say something
Comment
about
on
the
that?
sidewalks, on the sidewalks,
Well,
not
go
on
ahead and
Tiger
comment on
grants.
sidewalks. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it was the point that, and speaking with Luke Albert, there are spots around the
Yeah, we
city,
know
and
that,
some are
yeah.
very old spots that there are no developers, and it was finding those areas of where are the sidewalks either not there at all or in dire need of replacement. And so that was back to same with pavement, updates. This was going along with that. And that's why I said, I don't know if it belongs with this or not. So,
Well, if they're not there and they need to be there, I think it's our concern. Sherry?
Well, and I think rather than making a whole nother, plan, I think it either belongs there or maybe with transportation because it is a integral part of transportation of the whole area. So maybe when we look at our,
By foot.
that's one other area. That's how people get from place to place. We have the trails. It seems like it should be able to dovetail very easily into those other areas to make sure it's all covered if it's not covered under development standards.
Joe?
For me, I don't have a problem with, I think the sidewalks should be explored. I agree there with some of them coming off only because like with the street maintenance and with the right-of-way crews, to me, that's an operational issue. They should be looking at every budget year to see if there's ways to make it more efficient or if there's funds available to broaden, the work on the road. So I don't have any problem coming off of this because I think they're operational issues anyway.
Bill?
It's funny, when the subject was brought up, my takeaway in hearing that was, how do we ensure that sidewalks that we have are properly maintained? We talked about, as you tied this to the street, the roadway maintenance, which to me means roadways that are already in, how do we maintain them? When you mentioned sidewalks, my mind immediately went to how do we maintain the sidewalks that we currently have so that we're not,
Both, really.
yeah, in 5 years from now, we're not having to spend $5 million on sidewalks throughout the entire city. So since we haven't talked about that yet, I think that becomes perhaps an education that we need is how do we actually do that? Do we do that, or do we just repair them on an as-needed basis? I can certainly speak in my particular subdivision. We've been there for about 15, 16 years now. I know of one area that the tree grew and literally blew the sidewalk up, and it was repaired. But I don't know who did it. I don't know if the HOA did it. I don't know if it was still part of the development agreement. So if in 15 years that can happen, what about the other areas that have been in the city longer than we've been there, and how do we address that? So I don't know that I need an answer tonight, but I think that for me, those two things go together. It's where we don't have them that we need them, and where we got them what do we do with them once? So is it a simple answer, or is it, or do we have to wait for the resident to call and go, hey, the sidewalk in front of my house blew up, and now we'll come out and fix it?
Councilmember Stipp, so when sidewalks blow up, our crews are pretty quick to get out there and fix it because obviously it's a liability to the city. But we can, I don't have more specifics. I don't know if there's anything else to add tonight, but we can provide, I would like to provide council with how that happens. As it calls in, do we go out and inspect those as part of our normal maintenance?
It has to be like the curve that I complained at McDonald's that was apart, and then finally McDonald's just put it together in the little pieces. I continued to complain about that, and they had it done, but it was through the management, I think, of the development there.
And that was on private property, but they were very responsive to
they were responsive to that. So when you say, can we do that? I think there's opportunity to appeal to them about certain things, especially if it's a negative to their community or their business. So
I think we had that issue in Estrella years ago with the tree between the sidewalk and the, remember, Brian? We had that issue in Estrella when a tree buckled and someone fell or tripped. And I think she sued us or was going to sue us.
Yeah, it can happen, yes.
Bill?
So to answer your question, get off the sidewalk, if you will. Personally, I don't have, because you're looking for consensus, I don't have any issue in taking these items off. But I do have a number of questions procedurally about how we're going forward. So if you're looking for direction, can we take these off? From Bill's perspective, yes. But at what point are we going to review the goals and the focus areas? At what point are we going to talk? Because I know the next slide is we want to add some things. So is tonight the night? Is tonight's our night in the batter's box, and we're going to move forward after that? Because I don't think there's enough minutes left on the clock.
Mayor and Councilmember Stipp, the batter's box, if you will, are your council retreats every year. So that will be the time this coming October when we'll have an extensive conversation, a higher level conversation about the direction of the strategic action plan, taking a look at the focus areas, taking a look at the goals and so on, and seeking some broader direction. And as I've worked through this, I look forward to engaging in that conversation, have some recommendations from my own experiences in other cities and things like that. So really tonight is kind of taking what we gathered from your previous council retreat, what were some of those consensus action items that resulted from that, as well as the timely staff and departmental level issues. So we're kind of trying to, at this point, to focus in on these actions, but we look forward in October to having a much more thorough conversation about procedure and higher level.
But
Will you have at the same time, the questions tonight on the sidewalk? Can we get those answered during that?
Yes.
Okay. So some of these very simple things that they're asking about, if we could have those answers and not have to search for them. So as you hear them make these different comments tonight, I think Sherilyn's comment about the website or the renewal of it, some of these aren't really in depth. They're very simple questions that I think that can be answered. So if we can be sure those are collected. 25 and yes, go ahead.
Well,
Joanne.
and that's why, I said I think I'm out of your cycle because I was looking at all the action items. And I guess what I was a little confused about, back to Bill's question, was, but didn't it say that you're going to bring this back to us in August to vote on it? Some of the items that I saw as actionable items, or at least in my mind, the thoughts to discuss, was pieces that have happened since our last retreat. And so now if we're voting on it in August, so correct me if I'm wrong, if we're voting on this in August, we talk about it in October, then that's not even going to be for a whole nother year, because we have things, what's not even in the strategic plan is the issue of a new fire station. And then we just had a discussion with about different developments. And we talked about maybe an action of having a charrette for developers to come in and see what our great planners had kind of put together, some of those things. That would be an actionable item. Some things for F&R, Fiscal and Resource Management, looking at all of our development agreements and making sure that we're sticking with them and they're under control and that we're up to date, and that should be an actionable item. The fire department I'm concerned about. Another item that I really would like to see, and this one could be something that we talk about.
Can I
future.
interject?
Go ahead.
There? So I hope everybody was here when there was an agreement about the study coming in, waiting for the study. Was that?
Well, that's
Did everybody just
that's
pass
on there,
that over?
but it's
Okay,
not in.
I just want.
Right.
Okay,
One thing I did notice is that the About Goodyear item should be revised. The introduction about Goodyear, there's some things that are timely and items in there that should be revised a bit. And one of the other items that I had was about our community funding. That we have applications for, and $114,000, whatever that is, that we put out. But then we have some of our larger scale community funders, the YMCA, the Southwest Advocacy Center, the proposed vet center. Those are things that under the umbrella of community funding. So this is, to me, as an item that we need to kind of gather together and harness, in my mind. That also can include the volunteering. There's just many levels of that umbrella. So that was something that I felt. And I have others, and I don't want to get too into it because I'm getting the feeling this isn't supposed to be the time, but at the same time I'm confused that we're going to vote on this in August, and we've had items that have come up since the last retreat that aren't going to be in this next year, and that concerns me. So am I off base here? Or?
Brian, can you address that?
And very, very good points. The strategic action plan, it's one of those things that's always moving, and for us to try and keep initiatives and council direction in there, that's our challenge, quite frankly. I mean, some like development agreements. We are absolutely evaluating those now. City management staff, along with legal. By the way, we're almost what % through a Stray Mountain Ranch? 89% of the way through those 60 agreements. So it's something that we're doing. Joanne, you had brought up looking at community funding. There are some opportunities for council that we're looking at for the retreat as far as a menu list of items. So in my one-on-ones with council, what items do you think should at least be on a list for consideration by council? That's one of those. So that's something too. The fire station study, that's a directive that we have now. Is it in the action plan? No, it's not. So the challenge is how do we get those in there while this is moving? And we do have other directions from council that may or may not always be in the strategic action plan. So that's our challenge. But what we try and do is get back on cycle of having the strategic action plan adopted shortly after the budget is adopted, because that is a policy of council as far as where we're spending our money and what the departments have had for supplementals. So that's why we are trying to do it in August. If it's council's direction to back off of that, we can certainly do that. We know what we're striving toward in several areas. And we absolutely want to make sure that council provides the input if there are areas in the plan where we should not be focusing from a goal area, or if there are items that should be included.
Well, I think what's coming out of this, in my view, sitting here, is they want to be assured that the items that each of these have said as their concern, I want to see it somewhere, so that it doesn't get lost. So I'm not telling you how to do this process, but I think everybody's got something that they have said that they feel is.
You have parks in there, like you have that are, we've already, stated a long time ago that back to operational, they're going to be, improved, or they're going to be done. I don't understand why there are new items in here, but yet the concern of looking at our development agreements is not. And so, those are kind of some of the things I don't understand. Some items are ongoing. Succession planning. I'd like to hear again. It's been a while since we've heard about that. But yet it's still in here. So, I would be concerned about approving it in August, with not having some more feedback. I guess it's the cart before the horse type of situation right now. But I guess that's just where I'm sitting about voting on it in August is my concern. And I'll be happy to just not bog down tonight, but send my questions later. That's okay.
Bill, I'm going to Bill. Bill?
I agree. I would also, quite honestly, ask that you not send those questions in unless we all get to see them.
Oh.
Because those get to, you said something tonight about sidewalks that I never even thought of. And then we ended up driving off of how do we add these sidewalks to areas that we don't have, let alone take care of them. So we lose collective momentum when I'm going to send my ideas, and then I'm going to send my ideas, and we never get to hear that. We never have that discussion, and this is the only place we can do that. So I would I'd just say, please let's not bombard everybody with it. Let's have an actual discussion. Let's have a real work session on it. But the other thing is, Joanne, you touched on it, is a lot of the things that are in this strategic plan are very operational. And, update Loma Linda Park. We've been talking about Loma Linda Park even before I got on council. And we're finally at a resolution for it. I don't know that that's strategic anymore. That's operational. Let's just fix the damn park, and then we can move on. So, yeah, and we are.
Right.
So I think I agree that if we vote on this in August, we're basically giving our stamp of approval for what we already know is an incomplete plan. So let's do a real strategic plan. Let's get strategy in front of us, and let's move forward. And if we wait until October after the retreat, then we can look at the goals, we can look at the focus areas, we can make sure that we're all on the same page with what those things mean, and then we can provide some real direction. Right now, it's like a machine gun. One bullet at a time is coming out of this thing, and we just can't stop it. So let's slow down and let's get it right.
Thank you. Sherry?
I think I have to agree. I think by doing the plan in August, what we're doing is we're saying this is what we've done. It looks more backward looking to what we've approved and where we're at not forward looking, because there's a lot of stuff obviously that comes out at the retreat, and also when we do the CIP and all that, we start moving projects around. Like, I know we're waiting for the study, but the fire station and everything else, we start moving things, and the goals shift. And I think if we do it more simultaneously with that, and I know this year we got a little behind the eight ball, the retreat got moved, and we had a lot of like timing issues. It didn't work out right, but it seems like this is like stuff we've already done. So it's not strategic for the forward. It's more of this is looking back. And I just think we'd have, maybe rather than to redo it again in a couple months, it seems like maybe we just wait and add that information.
Molly?
And come back in August maybe with another work session. And I personally do not want to see a fire station in a strategic plan. I think that's something we have to deal with now, not put it in a 5-year strategic plan. And I think we got the fire study in, and we're going to get that result back. So when we get that result back, maybe then we can determine if it's appropriate or not, because I just don't know. I mean, we don't have any other facility marked in here, like finish the police administration building, build an aquatic center, where's the rec center? We don't have any specific stuff. I mean, we have things, and the development agreement is a wonderful idea, because up until 3 or 4 months ago, 5 months ago, we never dreamed we weren't staying on top of all the development agreements. So this time last year, I had no idea we weren't keeping an eye on all of them. So
Some of them were, in defense, some of them were really old.
yeah, I just assumed they were
so
all
old.
still perking along,
But really old.
really, really old.
As old
So
as I am, probably.
I just think we need to really take a look
You
and
want
really
to answer
think
that
some
before
more.
there's 3 questions more? Or do you want to let them hit you at all one time?
Yeah, what I'd recommend, I mean, great comments, and are we trying to force a vote in August? Absolutely not. But part of it is looking at the strategic action plan is one way of demonstrating to the community those areas where council's focusing, and absolutely needs to be in several areas in your focus areas. One thing I would ask, and we do have a few minutes left, but certainly don't want to cut off council, but under the new actions, it actually, if Pam had an opportunity to go through those real quickly, you can kind of see where we're looking at adding some items to this that may help in some of the discussion that's been happening. And if that'd be okay, I should go through that
Are these
quickly.
questions quick, or is it something you can quick? Okay, so who did I say would go first? Bill, Joe, and then Bill, and then Joanne.
The good-looking one here.
I know you're Joe.
Yeah. No, just real quickly, there's several things when we do our retreat that I would like to see from a strategic standpoint us pursue. Okay, that may not be in here. So I'm with the group that I really would not like to see the vote in August, because I'd like to convince my fellow council members there's some things we should focus on that maybe aren't there right now, or at least bring them a little bit to the higher level. So I would rather do the retreat and then, because have that give and take and have a good strategic discussion among all of us, and then figure out where we go before we vote on that. I'm in agreement with the others on that.
All right, I'm going to go Joanne. Joanne?
Oh, I was looking for it because it was in here, the public administration building, and I'm looking for it.
And the rec center's in there as well.
And the rec center's
is,
in
yes.
here. So thank you.
Like I said, I haven't seen it. I've been away for a week, so I apologize.
Don't worry.
If I'm speaking
Bill?
out of turn.
No, you're not.
No, what
I apologize.
Don't apologize
think-
for anything.
by waiting to the retreat, which is in October, which follows the study, which we're supposed to get in October as well.
Mm-hmm.
If we wait until that time, the result of that may give us a need to be strategic about the other stations that may be necessary from it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do this in August, we're gonna do it, and then we're gonna end up waiting until we get it anyway. So I think if we give it some time, we can read through it, we can kind of digest it, wait until the retreat, spend some good time there,
Right.
and have a healthy discussion about what should or shouldn't be in there, I think we're going to be we're going to provide stronger direction, but we're going to be a lot more confident as a council personally with a good strategic plan.
I think we see around this table that the mayor has to go along with this. I think there's also some misunderstanding on it, the process of, I really see that tonight because they ended up, expectations was different. So that says to me, we really don't quite understand, or we're not on the same line as the staff is for a strategic plan. And their subjects are very touchy to them, and so they want to see it in black and white, written down. So there's that space between this time that's made it very confusing for them. And I think with all the work, and Pam, I have to say, I read I read through just like Joanne did, but I was reading for the process to see what was going. And I thought you did a real good job of the information that you had that you put on here. So the information is in this book. They're just disagreeing with other subject matters and how it should play out. Mm-hmm. So in order to make sure that we have exuberance of this council, as a mayor right now, I have to say we have to fix this. So can I fix this for you? No. So I have to turn it over, Brian, to you and to staff with somewhat of an apology because I know how many hours of work staff has put in just to get to this. So that always makes me feel a little concerned that somehow we didn't get our message over to you on what our expectation was. So how you want, I think would be good to go through this one little, the next section, please, before we call this an end, okay?
Yeah, and Mayor, members of council, thank you for your feedback. And, I came in with fresh eyes, and many of the things that you're bringing up are observations that I have made that I have been looking forward to having longer conversations at the retreat. And so from my perspective, I think going ahead and tackling that at the retreat, not passing sort of a stopgap plan with a few changes and really getting on the same page, I think that's great direction, and I look forward to working with you through that. I am happy to share with you the direction of the recommended additions, and essentially what we'll do is we'll hold on to these and continue to bring these forth.
And then, okay, so go ahead.
So the proposed changes that resulted from the last retreat in February 1st is when you had your strategic action plan discussion. We're bringing back a recommendation of one new goal be added, as well as 13 new actions. Those actions coming from a couple of different places: the council retreat, budget discussions, the results of the citizen survey, and then staff recommendations as well. So these new actions, the first two are within the area of fiscal and resource management, and both have to do with our police department. These are efficiencies. You'll see I noted the goal within the focus area that currently exists that these actions would fall underneath. And so the two that were recommended by the police department were a citizen online reporting program, as well as upgrading traffic unit technologies. So efficiencies that help them to do their job better and interact with the public better. Within Goal 5 of Fiscal and Resource Management regarding collaboration and partnerships, police is recommending enhancing their business liaison function of Police Community Services Unit to help improve that work with the community. In the area of economic vitality, we're recommending one new goal, and this, I should have noted at the beginning, any action that has a little asterisk, those were actions that I looked through the extensive notes from the council retreat, talked with Brian over how that retreat went and so on. And so these were the items that had come out of your discussions then. So that's what that asterisk means. So evaluating the traffic signal standards. I know there's a work session later this year on that very issue, and we were recommending adding it to the plan. Within the quality of life area, under the public safety business process improvements, that's where you'll see we are recommending the fire station study. I like that idea of waiting for the study to come out, deciding on a direction, and that would become the action that goes into the plan after the retreat. Piloting the community paramedicine program, something that our fire department is working on that you discussed at your retreat. and then finally exploring the expansion of the prescription drug box program. Then in the area of sense of community, we are recommending at the goal level, and this is that third level directly under focus area. One of the things that I noticed and walking into budget discussions and so on when I started is a lot of focus on gathering spaces and parks, and that wasn't represented anywhere in the plan explicitly. So I do recommend, and we can continue to craft this, but a goal number 4 in sense of community that would read something like add and expand community gathering places, improve parks and recreation amenities. And you'll see underneath that we have listed much of work that is ongoing, as was mentioned, and then some farther looks ahead, like once the mall's developed, how do we improve gathering spaces around that area? So that was the quick run through of those 13 items, and given the new direction, you'll have probably a little more time to chew on those. But I am happy at this point to kind of move on to discussion of those.
All right, just a moment. Bill?
Just real quick on the previous slide you had, we've got the community paramedicine pilot program. That was a 6-month pilot. We give an end. Didn't mind on that.
Yeah, Councilmember Stipp. So we're looking at getting funding. Actually, the funding would take place. Remind me, Chief, is it July or is it December? Because I know it'd be 6 months after that is when we'd actually be running the program.
I thought it was July. That's why I meant.
Can you come up here? Yes. Thank you.
Mayor, Councilmember Stipp, the funding has started to flow. We're having substantive meetings with the stakeholders to put the plan together. There are some synergies that have been built between the two grantors, the tenant group and the St. Luke's Vitalist group. So we're going to be able to leverage those two grants together actually and work on the same customer base, which is really exciting news for us. So pieces are starting to fall together, but it's going to be a few weeks before we actually hit the ground. And then, so it'll go into 2017, I believe, and an actual final date I don't have for you off the top of my head.
No, but we're February or March anyway.
Yeah, it'll be into 2017 before we're finished with the pilot and give you some results.
Okay, so for the sake of our discussion, we'll have the fire station study done by October, but we won't have the results of the pilot, so that could be more strategic than, say, we've got to conduct the fire station study. Well, by the time we actually adopt this thing, that's going to be over. So as Pam pointed out, that'll be the outcomes of that will then become strategic, where we won't have the same situation will not apply to the paramedicine thing. That's where I was driving.
Councilmember, so that's a fair assessment. We may have some data points for you. We may have some information we can share about how it's gotten off the ground, but we won't have the finished product until sometime in early 2017.
Thank you.
And if I may on that, we're actually having a presentation to council by the fire chief in August as far as an update on that as well. So that'll be coming back before council.
Okay. Is on a related note to that, I think there's some changes going on in EMS regionally. Can we get kind of an update perhaps on things that are changing? We talked about this a year or so ago, and there's been a number of changes within the EMS component within our state and within our region.
Talking about ambulances
And EMS in general, and community paramedicine and EMS provision, et cetera, that this may be a time that maybe we can roll some of that into a strategy perspective as well.
Will we have all the information that we need on that at that point?
Mayor, Councilmember, we certainly could put an update together for you. I think it's fair. It's kind of a dynamic area right now.
Yes.
A lot of new faces in the ambulance provider scene, and certainly a lot of different types of pilot projects out there for community paramedicine. Time will tell how those kind of come together.
Right. I just don't.
What the industry
I want to dispel any idea that this will be a plan totally put together and ready to go. Yeah, so just
an update.
Just an update.
We
okay.
Certainly could put an update together for you to help give you some information to make a decision.
Brian?
And it seems like there's consensus on that as well. I was looking at heads nodding, so.
What?
Oh,
Consensus on what?
An update on EMS,
EMS.
which also
Oh,
includes
in
ambulance services.
August, sure.
Yeah.
Or October, whenever
All
it's
right,
ready.
Joe, you have the floor.
Just real quick, under your goal 4, you'll go back there for a sense, under sense of community. I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it in. I think this is probably where it belongs. I've been impressed with Avondale when I go there and I take a look at their light boxes. I don't know what's all involved, but there's artwork on there. They're all painted up. Kind of looks like they're tied into the community. And I don't know what's involved. I don't know if they're getting local artists to do that. But I tell you, I'm impressed with what they've done with that, sprucing up those boxes. So that, to me, from a sense of community, to me, that's a good feel-good thing for the community, especially if you get local artists involved in helping you do that project. So I would like to float it in under goal 4 here. And just a thought.
But now we've decided to wait until this other event, so it's going to be thrown in all. So you can throw it here, but it'll be thrown on at the retreat. Okay, it's now 5:50.
Can
We
I
have to have that dais at 6, so we may have to cut a thing. Is this a long
really
question?
quick question?
Yes,
It's
Wally.
really quick. Will you tell me where, if it can go in there, where the refurbishing or relocating of a fire station that has come to us to deal with now, plus the one proposed in Building 1 in Estrella? These are 2 different stations. Would you just, not today, but will you tell me later if it's appropriate they go in here or not?
Councilmember Campbell, I'd be happy to talk with you about that, both the fire station study, what that will look at as it relates to Station 181.
Right.
And then we do have renovation dollars for that as well.
Right.
So I can go into more detail
thanks.
after this.
Perfect. I just didn't want to forget
All right,
that one.
so let's just do a quick summary.
So I am very clearly not a fortune teller, so you can pretty much ignore the first half of this slide at this point. However, we have gotten a lot of really valuable information. I think that this discussion was absolutely needed, and it was great for me to see where you're coming from. What I'm hearing really is the next big step is the council retreat in October that we'll collect your feedback from today. I'll continue improving the draft and so on, but then we'll have a real launch point to go from to focus our conversation in October, and I look forward to that.
Well, Pam, you've had an initiation tonight, but you were prepared on what you were asked to do. So I thank you, and you did a very good job putting this together. And I have all the confidence in the world at the retreat. You'll be very helpful to the process also in preparing. So thank you very much. And I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and then at 6 o'clock.
Yep. The new ones always get clapped.